What's up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Alright, today's video, we're going to be talking about Daredevil #2 by Chip Zdarsky and Marco Checchetto. And in this video, I'm going to be breaking down exactly how long the new Daredevil villain, Goldie, has been manipulating Matt Murdock's life from behind the scenes, and now that he's killed Daredevil's girlfriend, Kirsten McDuffie, what's Goldie's next move now that he's made Daredevil, quotey fingers, great again?
You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie, and make it look easy.
So to kick this video off, one of the really big things I wanted to talk about this was just the fact that, well, for one, as we talked about in the previous video, Goldie is a character that was introduced very recently in Chip Zdarsky's run on Daredevil up to this point. The first thing I want to talk about in this video is that the character we've been discussing as of late with Daredevil, Robert Goldman, aka Goldie, a character who made their first appearance in Chip Zdarsky and Marco Checchetto's Daredevil Volume 6, number 22, in 2020. This character has been making the rounds a lot. We saw this character during Daredevil Woman Without Fear. It seemed like there were some ominous overtones going on with this character when he informed Elektra that the Kingpin had killed Matt Murdock, knowing good and hell well that did not actually happen. Goldie seemed to be in the know on something, and he has this knack for being able to tell people things and they just go do whatever it is he wants. He's kind of like, I guess, a nicer version of Zebediah Killgrave, aka the Purple Man. The Purple Man has the ability to just tell you to do something and you will go do it, though Zebediah Killgrave uses his power for what is largely considered to be evil. Goldie is using his power in ways to try to make Daredevil great again. He's trying to get Daredevil to be the best possible superhero that he could ever possibly be. And ever since their days going to Columbia University together, Goldie has been keeping his eye on Matt Murdock, already recognizing that Matt is a true superhero. Goldie keeps talking about this voice that he hears. It's like the voice of God or something like that, that the voice that he's hearing is coming from the divine. He even goes on to say that he has no idea how his power works. He just uses it for the greater good, and he knows that he needs Daredevil to step his game up, and basically lets Matt Murdock know that he has been working him from behind the scenes for as long as they've known each other, even going all the way back to Frank Miller's Daredevil number 168 in 1981, the very issue where Elektra's father was killed. This issue revisits the moments from Frank Miller's Daredevil where Matt, who at that point had not quite become Daredevil yet, had rushed off to help Elektra when he learned that she was being held hostage somewhere. And during those events, her father was just mysteriously shot from outside of a window because police were down on the ground level below and didn't really have a good eye on what was going on. But now we know why the police shot Elektra's father through that window, and it's because Goldie basically told him to. Goldie heard the gunshots that were going on up at the top of the building and just kind of muttered the words, "They're killing hostages." And this was more than enough to galvanize one of the police officers standing next to him to shoot, even with Goldie recognizing that the voice that he is constantly hearing told him that there was a trigger-happy cop right next to him. This is a huge thing because when you think about it, the death of Elektra's father, for all intents and purposes, threw Elektra largely off the trail of trying to recruit Daredevil into the Hand. I won't say she directly just gave up trying to recruit him into the Hand, but it pretty much deviated her from that moment forward and sent both her and Matt Murdock on a spiral that would lead them to where they are today, them going from being friends to lovers to enemies, backward and forward throughout their history, to the point where Elektra has finally taken her place as becoming the next Daredevil. All the while, Matt Murdock is still Daredevil, but Elektra did this to prove that she was willing to take up Matt's mission, something that she's criticized for a long time. And honestly, it's hard to believe that if her father was still alive, events would have played out exactly as they have to this point, where Daredevil and Elektra are now prepared to take down the Hand. We also have learned that the events of Typhoid Mary going after Daredevil are actually the work of Goldie, that he inspired Typhoid Mary to go to Wilson Fisk and work for him to try and take down Daredevil, an event that pretty much led to Typhoid Mary becoming one of Daredevil's A-list villains, and I would even dare say might have even put her on the path towards way later down the road hooking up with Wilson Fisk and them getting married. Once again, not to say that this probably wouldn't have happened to begin with, but I feel like had Goldie not told her to go to Wilson Fisk to offer to kill Daredevil for the Kingpin, I don't know if it would have happened. It's debatable. The other thing would be the FBI agent who leaked Matt Murdock's identity back during Brian Michael Bendis' run on Daredevil in 2002. Specifically, Daredevil number 32 by Brian Michael Bendis and Alex Maleev. Now, technically, this was due to a criminal who was actually speaking to the FBI, but that information got to the FBI and then eventually hit the newspapers. This was one of the more recent incidents where Daredevil's identity was leaked and made life fairly difficult for him. We also know that Goldie was responsible for the events of 2006's Daredevil number 82 through 87, the Devil in Cell Block D story arc by Ed Brubaker, Michael Lark, and Stefano Guadiano, where Matt Murdock is in prison alongside the Kingpin while there's a Quotey Fingers copycat Daredevil running free. The events of Matt and everything that happened in prison, I feel like Goldie had a lot to do with, but the one thing Goldie kind of hinted that he had nothing to do with was Matt's choices when he mentions that Matt alone was temporarily aligning himself with Wilson Fisk during a prison uprising within that arc, and then turning on Wilson Fisk once he realized that he was working with Bullseye as well, and then moving on to escape with the Punisher as his ally on the inside. Goldie kind of hints that maybe his temporarily aligning with Fisk was his own choice. At least that's what's depicted here, because it's a very quick decision. Matt doesn't stick with his decision to work with Fisk for too long, especially once he realizes that Bullseye's involved. But it does make you question more of Matt's decisions throughout the years, things that he's done that have always come off as questionable. Now it's starting to make me wonder, was this Goldie or was this Matt? It seems like some of the more questionable decisions are typically Matt. Like, Goldie doesn't seem interested in directly influencing the things that Matt says and does. It seems like he's more interested in manipulating the people who are around Matt so that can galvanize Matt into making the moves that he needs to make as Daredevil. One of the other things that's brought up too is the events of Mark Waid and Chris Samney's Daredevil number 16 through 18 in 2015, where Matt had to battle the villain Ikari, a guy who, for all intents and purposes, has Daredevil's abilities, like his radar sense, and as well as his fighting prowess and agility and stuff like that. The only difference being that Ikari is not blind. Ikari made a move against Kirsten, and something tells me Goldie was responsible for putting that bug in Ikari's ear to make him go after Daredevil's love interest. And then of course we have one of the bigger ones, which would be Mayor Fisk running for and winning the mayor's election in New York City in Charles Soule's Daredevil number 28 in 2017. This was all very likely Goldie putting a bug in Fisk's ear and telling him to run for office, and ultimately Fisk doing what he did, which we all know in the early stages of it, it seemed as though Fisk didn't cheat to win the mayor's office, but then we would later learn towards the end of the Mayor Fisk arc, he actually did cheat. The election was stolen, and this is what galvanized Daredevil into getting closer to Fisk during that time to take him down. Goldie has been pushing Daredevil so much, and we don't really know exactly what Goldie's endgame is beyond all this, but we do know that of all the things that he has done as of late, in the previous issue, we saw that he was responsible for a train being blown up with Kirsten McDuffie on it. We learn in this issue that actually didn't happen. Kirsten never got on that train. The train blowing up and all of the influences that went behind that was in fact Goldie. But Goldie set up events so that Kirsten never actually got on that train because he wanted to see how Daredevil would respond, and now he knows Daredevil was almost practically on the verge of killing him. And with this, we've learned a little bit more about what else Goldie is capable of. We see this guy jumping off of rooftops blindly as if he doesn't care. He doesn't have a care in the world about his personal well-being, because I think, like Daredevil, he probably has some similar capabilities. I'm not saying he has radar sense, but it seems like that voice that's telling him what to do, that's guiding him to tell other people to do things, to inspire them to do stuff they probably wouldn't have normally done. That voice that's guiding him is very likely telling him that he's going to be okay if he jumps off that building and that he'll land just fine. But he also does seem to have some of Daredevil's agility and dexterity, so there's a very strong chance that Goldie is a lot more superhuman than we've seen up to this point. So the real question now is, what happens next? Daredevil has now discovered Kirsten is in fact not dead. I don't think inspires him in any way. Now Daredevil seems more dejected than ever because we now know he's going to be marrying Elektra to solidify their union in their quest to take down the Hand by creating a new fighting force that is known as the Fist. And Kirsten is leaving town. She's supposed to be getting the heck out of Dodge. She is getting further away from Daredevil, and we know that Daredevil still has feelings for her. He has feelings for Elektra, but now he's a man divided even more than he was. I feel like if Kirsten had died, and once again, I want to make sure it's clear, I'm not for fridging female characters. I'm not really for fridging any character to motivate a superhero to do better, but it seems like if Goldie really wanted to galvanize Daredevil into doing whatever it is he was going to do to give him that extra edge to fight for, it does kind of seem like killing her would have been it. Keeping her alive as a reminder of his failures in his, pursuits and love, and that he's going off to marry Elektra, which he almost doesn't seem as interested in doing. I feel like that would only dull his edge, if anything else. That said, you do learn more from your mistakes and your failures than you do from your successes. Something Goldie does in fact tell Daredevil earlier in the issue, so maybe there is a point to this to keep Matt as a man divided. Maybe there is something that would actually sharpen that edge as opposed to dull it. But that said, Matt is a complex individual. It's difficult to say right now whether or not this is going to have the desired effect that he wants on Matt. Matt has a lot of Catholic guilt in him, and while that Catholic guilt is largely what propels him forward and kind of helps maintain his moral compass, it's oftentimes one of the few things that holds him back from doing the types of things I feel Goldie wants him to do. But Goldie's not done. Goldie turns himself in for the explosion of the train and all the people who it hurt and very likely killed, even though it's later said that the only person on the train at the time was the conductor, and the conductor was pulled away. But that said, that is technically an act of terrorism, and he turns himself in. But when he does so, he says he doesn't want to go to normal jail. He says he needs to be taken to a special prison. That's where he needs to be for him. And for him, I'm assuming he's talking about Daredevil. What he's trying to do is he's very likely wanting to go to the raft so that way he can get closer to some of the criminals and enemies that Daredevil has faced off against in the past. That way he can inspire them to do more, very likely getting them to either get themselves released, or I could even see him playing the long game here where he tries to make them get out under acts of benevolence, trying to get them to operate under good behavior. That way they can get out, and then once they're out, they can act a whole monkey. That would be another way he could do it. But I could just as easily see him take the low-hanging fruit and just tell them to cause an uprising. They all get out, and then we wind up getting a Nightfall situation. For those not familiar with Nightfall, that is the Batman series where Bane basically unleashed all of criminals, and this led to Batman working overtime to get them all back into Arkham, and that was when Bane decided to strike. When Batman was so tired from rounding up all of his rogues gallery, Bane comes in, then catches Batman at his weakest and takes him down, breaking his back, and that's how you get Jean Paul Valley as Azrael coming in and taking over his... Anyway, that's not important. Now, the reason I'm saying this is because what I've been noticing lately is that the current Chip Zdarsky run of Batman is mirroring some aspects of Moon Knight and Daredevil. So it would stand to reason that Chip Zdarsky's Daredevil might do something similar, mirroring events that have happened in Batman. Not saying they're going to be 100%, to the letter the same thing, but just certain little aspects of that character's past I could easily see playing into Daredevil's future. Goldie unleashing all of his villains, that could be one of them. I would even dare say one thing that people probably aren't considering is that he could also very easily just make them all be good, period. So that way Daredevil can focus more on the Fist rather than focusing on all the random and sundry villains that he normally deals with. That could also be a reason that Goldie's doing what he's doing. That way Daredevil can throw himself 100% into taking down the Hand once and for all. No distractions. That is one of the things Goldie brought up in the previous issue, that Kirsten was just a distraction. Get rid of the distractions, you can focus on the task at hand, and then once that's done, maybe we can go back to to business as usual. But anyway, that's everything I want to talk about with Daredevil. I've been enjoying, well, for one, it's Chip Zdarsky. He's been on Daredevil for the past few years, and it's been fantastic, and it continues to be just that. I'm ready to see what's going to happen next with the reintroduction of the Punisher into Daredevil's line of sight, considering everything going on with the Punisher right now. But with that said, if you want to know more about what's going on with Chip Zdarsky's Batman, check out this video right here. And if you want to know more about one of Daredevil's courtroom besties, check out this video down here to learn everything you need to know about She-Hulk. In the meantime, let me know what you thought about Daredevil #2. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.